So welcome everyone. I'm just really, it's just nice to always be reminded that when we just enter that silent space, that silent mind is always present in a non-dual way, and it's always a reminder that that inner silence, silent mind is there, and certainly we also experience that when we're touched and connected to the earth. So as we do here in Australia, particularly in my workplace where I work alongside First Nations people, and we start a meeting with acknowledgement to country. And that's the First Nations language here in Australia. Acknowledgement to country, which is from ground to sky in all directions. And so I'd like to acknowledge that I'm sitting on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, one of the 5 tribes here around Melbourne, which is around the bay. And I pay my respects to the custodians of this land over the last 60 to 80,000 years, who have taken care of this land, and I benefit having been a migrant, second generation migrant since the 1960s. So I pay my respects to the custodians past and present. And I'm sure in your local setting there's an acknowledgement of some way to the custodians of the land and place that you live in. Okay, all right. So today is the final part of our series, Earthing and Not Squandering Our Planet. And so I will start with a bit of a summary, because I'm aware that some people have been here right through all the weeks. There may be some who have come today. And today is sort of when we came together as a co-circle to create this series, is a kind of integration session where we're trying to sort of integrate everything that's happened in the last 5 weeks or so. And if it's your first day, that's okay, because you'll be bringing other material from other experiences to this, which you'll be process orientated. And I'll take you through that, and then we will have a sort of period of the session today where we're writing. So I have sent instructions to have pens and pencils and blank paper, and we'll begin to sort of make sense of what awakening practices are arising with use of the 3 tenets, with reference to the 3 tenets in particular. So, we may have some time for a group discussion at some point, depending on time, and then there'll be a sort of mini circle with the presenters just giving a final closure remark of their experience, and we will then finish with a transition point to the Echo Sattva community room, which is on the Hive, for future community gatherings. And then we'll unmute and recite Joanna Macy's Echo Vows together as a finishing. So that's our landscape for today. So welcome. Looking forward to your engagement, and I'll need all the help I can get through this process. So let's just start with a brief overview. So David Loy came to the first session and really expanded and asked the question around a new bodhisattva way, an echo sattva way. And he was posing the question around, as I understood it, how can Buddhism go beyond self-awakening to social awakening in the world, move us away from that individual as well as the social? And So David sort of taught us a lot about the Buddhist teachings as the value of not being attached to our actions, just being. And at one point talked about that one of the best things we can do is create loving communities, which is really something that stood out for me in that. There were many other things, such as the three poisons and how they manifest greed, anger, and delusion in our institutions. So that was a lovely opening and very powerful, inspiring opening from David. And then we have Chris Kane asking the questions that when the challenges are so huge, what can an individual and even a local community really do to make a difference? And so we were exploring what it is that we can grow individually and grow together. And Chris provided sort of beautiful Buddhist tales that inspired us to they're beautiful stories, and they're all recorded, these sessions, aside from parts of council last week. So really encourage everyone to look at those recordings. But Chris's question is where is it and how is it that we find our tiny act of truth? Our tiny act of truth. So what is your act of truth? What is on fire where you are today? And where is the wounded earth in your local setting? And then Olga in the video beautifully shared and introduced us to the planetary health movement over the last 10 years, 2015 in particular. But more importantly, they shared their experience of the floods in their region last year and what emerged through that crisis from the people's response and their solidarity that emerged from that. But the planetary health movement is very much, studying the science of how the planet is impacting human development. And it's really interesting to hear that as a social worker and family therapist, to hear that phrase and hear about that movement and how the intersection between the planet and human health is so interconnected in that way. And one of those being our mental health in particular. And then last week we had, a slight, and apologies to those who came 2 weeks ago, misunderstanding around the timing of that. Time zones got the better of us in that context. So we rescheduled, and last week was our Echo Council. Our council where Kathleen, contemplatively brought us to the question, what is the space beyond hope? What is that space? When we enter beyond hope, and given the climate emergency and the catastrophe, what is there in that space? And she made reference to the material on adaptation and that rather than kind of moving away from sustainability, it's moving towards how we can best adapt given the circumstances. So with all of that, today is about, well, how do we keep this alive? How do we keep the earthing practice, which is a doing word, earthing? And, as we've described it on Hive, our earthing intention is to connect closely with the land. You see the image on Hive as our hands touching the roots of trees. And how do we connect and care for the land and for the earth? So today we're using the 3 tenets as a way to perhaps give us a path of some sort, a pathway of entering not knowing, and bearing witness, and healing action. So I'll say a few words about the three tenets from my own experience, and sort of the question of how do I respond to climate emergency was something that its origins are in the 1990s when I was studying social work, and there was a movement called green social work, and also when I was studying theology. And in those days, there was a lot of emphasis on liberation theology, on feminist theology, and eco-theology. So this idea and this principle that if everything is born in the creation of God and we all manifest God's nature, how do we take care of that? How do we protect it? And that was a striking idea amongst liberation theology. But it really brought to mind for me this beginning. It's like the seed for me to start to consider how is it that I can engage in social action to care and protect the earth as a non-separate manifestation of the God within myself and earth as God. But I struggled. And, I went into political parties, the Greens Party in particular. I made decisions around what I ate. I made decisions about how I travel. And, but what I noticed was that there was still that, as David calls it, the poison of greed, of anger that showed up in those actions. And having come across Bernie's work about 10 years ago in particular, and joining the ZPI 10 years ago and following on that, receiving the precepts, the Peacemaker precepts from Roshi Barbara Wickamula, and joining the Zen Peacemaker Order and becoming part of that community since 2021. And also attending the virtual Bearing Witness retreats during COVID, the one on Auschwitz and the one on racism in America. These were very moving events for me, and they deepened the practice of the three tenets. And so this became a kind of opening, a process. And ever since that time, it's just continued to manifest and deepen for me, these three tenets over time. So let's remind ourselves about the three tenets. And I might actually bring this up. This is worth a look. I was doing some sort of research on this and came across this in the article Working in the Cracks. And it's an interview. It's a really great article. And this is how he describes it in that particular article. Let me share that. Okay. Can you see that? Yeah. I'm just going to have to.
If you decrease it a little bit. Yeah, now it's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let me read that out. I started with what I think are the three major principles in Dogen's writings. And the tenets of the Zen Peacemaker Order mirror these. The first is non-thinking. And I relate to non-thinking to our first tenet, not knowing. Not knowing is the same place a koan is meant to bring you to. A second important principle is shikantaza, just sitting. My translation of shikantaza is bearing witness. And for me, bearing witness is the state of total non-duality. Robert Heinlein, the science fiction writer, uses the word grokking, meaning becoming the experience. Bearing witness, shikantaza, and grokking are the same thing for me. The third principle is butsudo, the way of the enlightened one. For me, that's healing oneself and others through loving actions. Just going to put that in the chat for you. Thanks, Chris. So let's just hold those words in chat as we move through the three tenets. But what I really like about those words is the lineage and the way that Bernie has created an access point for us to take what is part of Dogen's, who's our kind of great-great-grandfather in the Zen tradition in the 12th, 13th century, a philosopher, and brought Zen from China to Japan and crystallized a pathway for us in everyday language and an awakening process. And so for Bernie, you know, his vow in all of this was to ask the question, how is it that we can experience the interconnectedness of life? Not just in our minds, but in every cell of our body. And that interconnectedness of oneness. And as I've listened to his talks, I never met Bernie, but as I listen to his successes, that seems to me to be the essence of his vow for life. How is it that I can give people the experience of oneness and interconnectedness? So when we take those words, we ask ourselves, where is it that we can create space for not knowing and bearing witness and love and action in our earthing practice? Where is it that earthing can offer us a space for not knowing and bearing witness and loving action? How can we use the earth as a resource? How can we be reciprocal and non-dual in that resource? So these are some of the questions that have been arising for me over this time. Now maybe just find my space here. Bear with me. So in all of that, my experience is, and as Bernie says also, is that, and as I wrote in the email, if we can listen, not just with our ears, but with our eyes and our noses and our mouths and every pore of our bodies, then we do not see all the ingredients in front of us. We are those ingredients. And once we listen, we have to act. So Bernie has that great story. You hear it many times about cutting your hand. And when you cut the hand and there's a cut on your hand, you respond without thinking because you're connected in one body. You feel the sense state. And while the cut is there and you have a memory of how to deal with cuts, you respond with care, naturally arising. He talks about the analogy of parents and infants, how they naturally respond to the infant in a non-dual way, looking for cues and looking for ways to care and read what their child is needing in moment to moment. And so how is it that we can attend to the worms of the earth, which is the question that Chris was asking us? How is it that we can feel and touch and be moved by the wounds of the earth so that we take naturally arising care out of that. So for me, it's a personal reflection, and I'll just share some kind of examples of not knowing and bearing witness and loving actions, and then we'll do that process with you. But one of the things that I've really found a moving practice, particularly over the last 3 to 6 months, as I've come to know this meal gatha, this sort of meal chant that we say before we eat. And I want to give my acknowledgement to Bread Loaf, Zen Mountain, where I'm a member in Vermont with Joshin Burns. And I believe this gatha is also the origins is Joan Halifax. And I've been to sessions and I've seen other meal gathas, but this one here is just really expansive. So it goes like this: earth, water, fire, air, and space combined to make this food. Numberless beings gave their lives and labours that we may eat. May we be nourished that we may nourish life. Earth, water, fire, air, and space combined to make this food. Numberless beings gave their lives and labours that we may eat. May we be nourished that we may nourish life. So I've found myself doing this, and now as I do it meal by meal, it's just this incredible joy of tapping into the present moment of eating, sometimes at work, sometimes at home. And I just see these beautiful ingredients that have been provided by the earth in front of me in a more intentional way. There's colour and diversity and all the various ingredients. And I pay homage to all the labours and the lives that I've offered. And that includes non-humans, the bees and the worms and the birds and myriad other ecosystems, as well as the people who, the farmers who may be in other parts of the world who may have very different views and very different values to myself. So to honour that food that's in front of me and to see that as an offering from earth in that. So that's in some ways, it's a not knowing. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but it's tapping into that spaciousness. It's tapping into that emptiness of just being in that meal, noticing the ingredients of the earth that have been offered. In bearing witness, we are asked to listen and encouraged to go beyond the bubble and listen to different voices. And as a way of building wholeness in our healing action. So Bernie sort of introduced the idea of plunges, and we know those very well in our lineage, our switch and street retreats and many other examples in that. And we know the upayas that he created for us, the 3 tenets, council practice, amongst others, the ZPO rule, the Mandela practice, the order of disorder, all these wonderful practices to try and get us to experience the oneness and interconnectedness of life. So my question was, what is the voice that I need to be listening to more outside my bubble? And I can't put a finger on this exactly, but one thing I noticed progressively that I started to turn to the ancient culture here in Australia, to the First Nations culture. And I started to engage with that community. And in particular, during what we call the voice referendum here in Australia, where there was a parliament process of people in Australia voting for the voice to Parliament, which was an advisory board that would be constitutional. and just to acknowledge that our first people here in Australia are not acknowledged in the Constitution. So this was a way of bringing, as one First Nations speaker said, the intention was to bring together the First Nations people, the settlers to Australia, our British colonial system back in 1700s, 1788 to be precise, and the multicultural immigration, to bring these forms of Australia together as one. Very kind offering in that. And I became involved in that voice referendum, trying to stay non-dual in it as best we could. But one of the beautiful things that came out of that was this voice referendum script of words that I'd like to just share with you at this moment. And Jeff's going to read out those words. So I'll bring it up. Is that big enough for you, Jeff?
Yes, thank you, Martin. Maybe one click or two if you could do it. Okay, good. Thank you. Uluru Statement from the Heart. We, gathered at the 2017 National Constitutional Convention, coming from all points of the southern sky, make this statement from the heart. Our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander tribes were the first sovereign nations of the Australian continent and its adjacent islands, and possessed it under our own laws and customs. This our ancestors did, according to the reckoning of our culture, from the creation, according to the common law from time immemorial, and according to science more than 60,000 years ago. This sovereignty is a spiritual notion. The ancestral tie between the land, or Mother Nature, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who were born therefrom remain attached thereto and must one day return thither to be united with our ancestors. This link is the basis of the ownership of the soil, or better, of sovereignty. It has never been ceded or extinguished, and coexists with the sovereignty of the Crown. How could it be otherwise that peoples possessed a land for 60 millennia, and this sacred link disappears from world history is merely the last 200 years?
Thank you, Jack. So during this time of the voice referendum, we were having study groups around, and it's a much longer version of this. And this was collated by First Nations communities. 2017, they met at the heart of Australia in the Uluru. And they created this beautiful piece of words as inspiration, as a reckoning and reconciliation, and an offering for us to join them in uniting Australia. So that's a bearing witness voice that has really opened up doors. And one of the things that I continue to be incredibly grateful for is the wisdoms of their notion of interconnectedness. So they talk about care of country, and that they are country, that we are country, and that we depend on country. And that's continues to be expressed through arts and through storytelling. And there are many other practices they offer that are enriching in connecting to the land and country. And then about 4 years ago, as a sort of act of responding to a climate emergency, I'd see these emails come through about this project called as a tree project. And I come from a lineage of growing lots of vegetables, Italian garden in the backyard, and I've always enjoyed doing that and following on the tradition of my mum and dad. And we make our own passata, and there's real joy in that process. But this project kept popping up in my inbox, and I said, I don't have time for this sort of thing. But then at one point I took a plunge, and so this is a project where there are volunteers across Victoria who volunteer to grow Indigenous seedlings and trees in their backyard. And those trees, after 6 to 8 months of care from seed, are then transported to farmers and land care groups who then plant in their own lands to regenerate the ecosystem in its original form. That project is now 4 years, and the first year I had very little success, been successful, but the beautiful thing about this community project is there are 400 volunteers. We grow together around 150,000 trees per year, which then go out to farmers and to land care groups. And there are little cells and little hubs of 8, and there's a coordinator. So if one person is struggling with certain species, we help each other. We share the extras. And we're always nurturing, supporting each other with our trickery and challenges of protecting and nurturing our trees. And initially it was 350 trees that we would grow each in our backyard. And this, in the last 2 years, I've been able to grow 2 kits, which is 700 trees. And this is a beautiful practice of watching the beauty of these seeds and nurturing the seeds with life, water, soil, and sun, and to be watching them sprout, and then to be in their cubes having to separate, when there's 4 or 5, separate and transplant into having 1 tree per cube, and growing that tree to somewhere between 30 centimetres and 50 centimetres, thereabouts. So I call these baby trees and infant trees, and I become very attached to them. And but the beauty is to be able to do that in the home, in our household. I don't have to go anywhere. I do it when I can, and it's an enriching experience of interconnectedness and realizing what it is, the profoundness of what trees offer us, offer me, beauty, the stillness, the oxygen, the care for numberless beings who come and reside in their homes in the trees, and to be reciprocal in that care with the trees. So they teach me a lot in that. So it's a wonderful project, and I'd like to share some photos of the trees. Oops. Bear with me. Okay. Right. So this is what arrives in the backyard. You can see the seeds, This is what we call the mulch that sits on top, the soil and the cubes. This is 700 cubes and 14 boxes. So 48 to 50 each box. Oops. So this is what we see as the sprouting of seeds. So sometimes what we do with these seeds is we put some of these seeds in the freezer, or we heat them with hot water, and we can see the life of the seeds begin to emerge. Just let me... Is it the right way? Yeah. So this is my little altar, which was spontaneous before the planting. So I wasn't even sure what I was doing here, but it just seemed and felt right to give some sort of offering and interconnection with the Buddha in this process. And so the seeds begin to emerge over weeks, some with more success than others. And this is the beginning of transplanting the seeds into a single cube. And this is how they are at the moment. This is referred to them as our tree sangha. And they'll be heading off to a farm at the end of May, in June, and I'll be joining them in that transplant. And what I'm really looking forward to is just being able to put them into the earth and to give that opportunity for them to connect in their roots together as one and diverse. Okay. All right. So now over to you. Opportunity for you to reflect on not knowing, bearing witness, loving actions in your local setting. So, pen and paper, if we have that at our access. Okay, so this will be an opportunity. I've sort of borrowed some of this process from the ZPO, and it's a way of just entering our kind of the awareness state through writing. So free flowing writing. And the invitation here is to use the paper, acknowledge the tree that's brought and the trees that have brought that paper and all the ingredients, and to start to write anything that comes to mind when these questions are sent to you. And just allow, there's no right or wrong, there'll be a struggle, but just be free in your writing. Just be free, just write. And I'll time that for about 6 minutes. And then we'll move on to bearing witness. So here are the questions. So on reflection on your everyday life, what earthing practices cultivate spaciousness, open mind, beginner's mind? Some examples: walking in nature, gardening, meditation in nature, koan stories, poetry, plunges, running in nature. So what practices, what earthing practices put you in touch with that open spaciousness, that emptiness? And what is your felt sense of not knowing? What is the felt sense, that pre-verbal sense in your body? This is the invitation that Bernie's asking us. What is your felt sense? So I'm going to ring the bell and we'll give that 6 minutes and then we'll just stop thereafter. Okay. Right. So just to transition, just to sort of distill the words that are in front of you, and just to go back and circle any words that or any phrases that stand out to you, that open in some way, inspire you. Just to spend a minute and just to begin that circling process. Any words, any phrases that stand out, that capture your imagination. Okay. Right. So it's a very beginning process here. Right. So we'll make a step now to bearing witness, listening deeply. Shikantaza, just listening. So questions here is, where do you go to listen deeply to the earth's joys and sufferings? Is there a particular experience in your life when this was most alive for you? Describe it. How did it feel? And what diverse earthian voices do you need to listen to help you reconnect more with the earth? Pick out any of those questions that sort of resonate or stand out. There might be a word in there, and just begin to write for the next 6 minutes in that, whatever arises, and allow the writing to emerge for you. We'll give you 6 minutes. Thanks. Okay. Transition point. Just take another minute just to circle any words, phrases, capture your attention. Okay. Right. So taking actions. What earthing social actions out of not knowing and bear witness have emerged in your life? What inspired you to take on this action? And what impact did it have on your relationship to the earth? There's a few examples there. That was 6 minutes. Okay, take a minute. You circle any phrases, words. Okay. All right. Okay. So transition point now is to, as I sent out in the email, some of you may have not received this, but you can create your own. And we can imagine these as our tree rings, internal core tree rings. So earthing not knowing, earthing bearing witness, earthing taking action. And take a moment, this is not an art piece of artwork, but just to take a moment that any words that you circled, just to place them, start to take a first step to place them in that, knowing that 3 circles are held by the trunk. They're all interconnected. They're all overflowing with each other. So we'll do that for a couple of minutes and then we'll have some reflection time. Okay. All right. So this is a very preliminary kind of process. You know, I did this and found it just sort of helpful without it being fixed, knowing that it's impermanent. But in my own image, it's sort of the image, as we know, can really be internalized. It just helps to hold that image in mind as we're encountering moment to moment. So now it's sort of an open dialogue. We have about 15 minutes or so. So any offerings, just offerings to the large group, What did you notice? What did it feel like? Any particular insights or openings that you'd like to share with the group? Feel free to unmute, use the electronic hand, and it'd be great to get, 4 or 5, if not more. So speaking to the essence as best we can. Anyone like to jump in? You'll agree it was a bit rushed. Did I hear someone? Yes.
I don't know if it relates to what you're asking, but I just thought I'd share what I wrote down. It just came right out about bearing witness. And David knows. I mean, I live up above 7,000 feet in the mountains. One direction I can see 10 or 15 miles, 40 miles that direction, maybe a half a mile that direction. I'm surrounded by trees, and witnessing the joy and the pain of the universe. I'm surrounded by trees, many of which are healthy, all too many of which are dying. Again, David Loy knows. Bark beetle, mistletoe, all kinds of infestation that's probably caused by climate change, by not getting cold enough in the wintertime. However, we had an indoor Christmas tree 10 years ago, and it was about 2 feet high, and I could see it out my window. And today it's 16 feet high. So the joys and the pain. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Wonderful. Olga.
First of all, I want to thank you very much. I was very moved by seeing your small trees. I also got attached to them. I imagine you giving them away in June. It's not going to be easy.
It's true.
Oh, I like your exercise very much. And when I centered myself around not knowing, I had the sense that when I get into that state in nature, that's as best as I can feel in life. I really feel totally one with everything. If well, that's what we say, no, one with everything. Then when I try to get into the second part, which was bearing witness to lands, to earth's pain, I felt very selfish. It was awful. I hated it because I really am centered in bearing witness to how people are in pain, and we are part of Earth, but we are not all of it. So I started thinking, how could I bear witness to land's pain? Of course, I do in small things, but a big thing, I thought, what do we have here? A big thermoelectric plant and all these fumes and this stupidity that we do. So maybe that's one thing I'll have to think about. And then in loving action, I could relate to that in many things, but as I said, mostly with people, and trying to be with people in a different way so that I learn from them, they learn from me, we learn from our surroundings. But I loved your tree planting, and I just realized more and more we are becoming respectful of our native people too. And in the ceremony we had to start to launch our planetary health group in the university, we invited a native woman chief to do the opening ritual, and that was very powerful. And to me, it was even more powerful to go visit their small community. It was like getting into a different, I don't know even how to put it in words, but it's like, it's another state of mind and of being on earth. Something, you have to feel it. It's difficult to describe.
Yeah. Thank you, Olga. Thank you. Yeah, I have a similar experience when more recently been joining what we call here yarning circles. So that's the Indigenous way of coming together in circle. And they do circles for smoking ceremonies, which is a cleansing. And on this one occasion was someone who passed away, and they were yarning around and sharing stories and having a smoking ceremony for this person who had deceased in very unfortunate circumstances. And then even this week we were doing a yarning circle at our workplace, and for a planning day, and that was just sharing, holding a stick as we went around. So the interconnectedness of Indigenous cultures is very present. And I also want to thank you, Olga, because you reminded us when you gave, I can't recall whether it was the first, but just marking COVID, 5 years, 4 years, maybe 5 years, 2020, yeah. That is the collective experience of bearing witness to the impact of climate emergency that we all hold in our bodies, we all hold in ourselves. And you reminded me to go back to that space, and even to 2019, where we had the bushfires here in Melbourne and the smoke coming over the city, and feeling that smoke and what it felt like at that moment. So thank you, Olga, in that. Mark, thank you. We can't quite hear you, Mark. For some reason, we can't hear you. Don't seem to be muted. No? Is it just me? You can't hear? Yeah, no one can hear.
Yeah, I can't hear him either.
You can't hear me? Absolute nothing?
We can hear you now. We can hear you now.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a bit problematic here with the technique by me. Well, I'm in a situation at the moment. It's interesting. You do something else like I do with your boxes, and I'm practicing all the things, so I can't say what I wrote. But what I do at the moment is a project. It's called SOLC, the Seeds of Living Connections, and it's about giving soil and seeds to the people around to grow food and food for humans and for insects, and to build social communities and doing something for the nature. And so it's bringing all this dynamic again up, and so that's my way to do all these things, not just on the pillow and in my thoughts. I think that's so important for me. And so that's all in this. It's all in the Tenets, and it's the only way, because I'm living in Germany, in Europe. I'm from 76, and it's a generation where we saw all the good things, but anyhow, everything breaks down at the moment. Let's see all my population who gives up, who stops thinking, who stops loving, and so important not to give the theory, but to try to think about this on this way, do this. That it's just, okay, I can do something, feel this, and I it's a good reaction. So I'm a grantee of Drop the Generous. I'm so happy I'm one of the 1,000. So this will support this, and I built this system so that it can be globally made. There's no politics, there's no bureaucracy, and I hope this will do a lot. All this stuff brings this up again. Yes, that's all in this. It's very nice to be with you at the moment, and there's so many of these situations coming up. Fits some yes, it's doing the right thing with the right people come. It's low. Yes.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for your offering late there in the evening there in Germany. Yeah, I think for me, there's something very nurturing and nourishing when you're tending to seeds, and something nurturing about the seeds of peacemaking. As David reminds us, we don't actually know what the seeds or the merits of our practice are for time to be. But there's something around the seeds of practice of peacemaking that is embodied when you're working with the seeds. So thank you. Okay,
Martin, there's a question for you in the chat from Sheila. There's a question for you in the chat from Sheila, if you want to attend to that.
Okay, I'll do my best. Yarning. So Y-A-R-N-I-N-G. That's a First Nations. So let's go have a yarn. Let's go have a talk. Let's go have a yarn. That's my accent there. And there's this wonderful book called Sand Talk, where they talk about sand talk, and they create images on the dirt, these beautiful images that you create. The book has no written content. It's all the images together. And so you yarn around this image. You share from the heart around an image in the sand. And that's a Sand Talk. That's the name of the book. It's a beautiful book. And it speaks to this idea of, imagery and using imagery to create listening conversations. Yeah. I'm mindful of time. We've got time for one more. Any other reflections? Yes, Claudia. Good to see you.
Hi. Yes. What came up to me in the exercise was first on the not knowing. Yeah, I love to be in nature alone, and I have to be quiet. And the words I circled were things like being in nature with all senses, in mindfulness, and a feeling of awe. So I think that was the first part, and and my kids are actually great teachers for me in that too, because they are much more with all their senses all the time than I am. So, and then going to the bearing witness part and the loving action part. I also actually felt that I want to connect more with farmers. And actually, I'm doing gardening with my kids, and we enjoy this a lot. But then really farming is a different story. And I feel it's very important that I understand better how farmers around the world these days are struggling with climate change and what their real needs are. And that's actually something I'm professionally just shifting position from being an environmental policy officer to the agriculture division and working on soils and land degradation globally. and I think the challenge is really big. So I think that is something I also, when it comes to joy and sadness, I sometimes it's really like, for me, it's like a surprise. It can be a surprise. I can enjoy the forest, and at the same time, let's say all my knowledge as an environmental scientist shows up. It tells me, look, that there's actually a lot of this forest is sick and in very bad condition, and that the soils under my feet are degraded all over the place. So that is not the not knowing, but it's kind of this, but it's also a reality. Yeah, so I think that's so, but of course, yeah, I don't know. So that's, I think for myself, a struggle also but I don't have the problem with anger, I must say. It's more like sadness, I think, what is arising in those situations. All right, so I keep it short. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful. Yes, and as we were reminded in our council last week, without just that under the sort of non-dual reality between suffering and joy, that they are not separate, they are not dualistic, they are one. And so when we're bearing witness to joy and suffering, they're all in one. It's all happening at the same time. To use the metaphor of a lotus flower, you need the mud for the flower to exist. So it's holding that as one in that. Wonderful. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. I just wanted to just to finish off with a few announcements now. So you may want to consider one option is I can just, how do I do this? No, it's not doing it. All right, I was just that you may want to share. I've got mine, and I'm going to share it on to the Hive Eco Suffer community. So this is a transition point. It's an opportunity for you to join as a transition from this group into the Eco Suffer group. I just haven't got the Hive link at hand here. And they that Eco Suffer group is led by steward holder Kathleen and myself and Lumi, and we hold Eco Suffer Council according to the Equinix, and the next one is in June. Is that right, Kathleen?
That's right, on the 19th of June, yes.
So everyone is welcome to join the Eco Suffer community, and you're also welcome if you feel courageous enough, and I'll do it in the next 48 hours, is to put some colour to your tree, create anything that speaks to you around that particular taking action map, bearing witness and not knowing and loving action, and share that and post that in that community as an offering. So that's an invitation for all of you who attended today. So thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge our co-presenters here, the co-circle. So they are going to say just one or two words each. So can I start with you, David? Just any final words of what this has been like, and what you take away from this experience.
Oh, a bit out of the blue there, but what I'm feeling most of all is community. You know, I mean, that really stands out for me. I think in some sense we're all starved for community, and the fact that we share this concern, take the time and such to come together and that just feels really, really right to me. So I'm so grateful to all of you for doing that, and really grateful to be a part of it. Right. So I guess that's what jumps out for me. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. No, you said one of the best things that we could do is create loving communities, and I won't forget that, David. So thank you. And you're doing that remarkably well around the world, and you've touched Australia here in Melbourne, I recall, just before COVID. So thank you very much.
Well, here we all are, right? So thank you.
Yeah. Chris, any kind of words you'd like to share?
I guess I was going to say I agree with David. I think for me, the community is wonderful. And I think finding little ways, just like tiny little things in my day that I can do that remind me of that community and that kind of earthing, like the grounding sense of earthing, like putting my fingers in the ground and the earth. Things I can do. So what I do when I leave the house is I stoop and push my fingers down into the soil every time I leave the house. And the wonderful thing about that is it changes the way I pay attention to where I put my feet. Like I stand on fewer ants. But it also reminds me of all of you guys and all the people who are walking on that same earth elsewhere in the world. So I'd encourage little tiny practices like that just kind of the earthing practice itself, touch the soil. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. And thank you for your wonderful photo on our Hive page that you created for us. The beautiful image for this earthing. It was just beautiful, very touching to see that image. And it's not an image I won't forget that image. So thank you very much. Ovidio, any final words? Encourage you.
Yes, Martin, I want to thank you for this very nice presentation. And, I am very impressed with the resilience. That's a very important word, the resilience of human beings. We are living very difficult times. And I think the world is reacting to what's going on with a lot of resilience. And I think the same word is good for us. We've met about 6 months ago to put together this series. And there was some hard work, lots of gratification and some frustration, for sure, always. But I think we have shown resilience, though.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to say is that, being the maker for 20 years, I was one of the privileged to have spent a lot of time with Bernie. And Bernie, and I also was part of the time when, Bernie left us, and we were very worried because he was so central to Zen Maker. And we were, how is Zen Maker going to be after Bernie? And resilience also, because Bernie empowered, he enjoyed empowering people. And I am very happy to see Zen Maker staying so relevant to our times, bringing this issue of us taking care of the earth. So I want to finish just saying that, Bernie, wherever you are, I know you are very proud of what we are doing with the Zen Makers.
Thank you, Ovidio. Thank you. Wonderful. Lovely to hear that. Olga, mindful of time here. Olga, any?
I want to emphasize the sense of community and loving communities. That was what stayed with me also from the very first day with David. And there was a very tense moment for me in which, in one of the small rooms in which I had this experience of being from a very different part of the world than most of the rest of the group, and what kind of strangeness introduced, and what kind of tension. But I do believe that we are much more alike than different, and that's what this kind of community sharings show us. So thank you very much for this opportunity. It's been very enriching for me.
Great. Thank you, Olga. And Kathleen.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed the
the exercise very much, and the oneness that I experienced also in our preparation group, this oneness in diversity, that's very strong in this moment. So experiencing these different characters and temperaments that we have, the global span, and to experience it as one, and also in the process of growing together. So there's something, a oneness and sameness from the beginning, and at the same time a growing towards each other in kinship. That is a beautiful experience for me in doing this series. And of course, today it came more clearly to my mind that we did seeding in winter, that we started seeding in winter time, and it was all still silent in the ground. And we started, tending the seeds of this series. And now it's springtime, and it really grows, and it has blossomed beautifully, and it will spread more seeds, I'm sure.
Yes.
So I'm happy with the community also, and meeting you all in the community, Ecosattva community room, and in other possibilities for us to meet. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. And while things have been blossoming there, things have been falling here in autumn in Australia. So it's a lovely non-dual reality there, around the world. And let's finish off with Jeff. Jeff was the dreamer of this series. Over to you, Jeff, to finish off.
Thanks, Martin. And I put a link for the Ecosattva room in the Hive in the chat. So if you can save that. And if anybody has difficulty getting there, please email me, and we have a little video that can help you find your way into the Hive. I'll be very quick. The original idea I had was to have a presentation from the continents, from all of the continents, and my wise collaborators talked me out of that. And I think, thank you so much. I think we ended up with a better program because of that. However, I got what I wanted. Because look at us. Here we are. We're representing the one body of this globe, of this earth. So, and we're all together. So thank you all. And especially thank you, Martin, Kathleen, Olga, Ovidio, Chris, David, everybody who did all the work. Thank you so much.
And thanks to your team, Chloe and Holden, who have done a lot of work behind the scenes in that. So thank you, much appreciated. Let's finish off with reciting Joanna Macy's wonderful Ecosattva vows. Let's just all unmute, and it'll be a chorus, and let's just merge together and see what unfolds in the listening. So, can we all see that?
Yes, Martin.
Yeah. Based on my love of the world and
understanding of the independence of all things, I vow
on earth lightly that the most finally on the food products
and energy I consume.
I commit myself daily
to
to the healing of the world and the world
welfare of all beings,
to
discern and replace human systems of oppression and to harm,
to invite
like personal discomfort as an opportunity to share in the challenge of our collective liberation,
to all
for inspiration, strength, and guidance from the living earth,
from our
from our
ancestors
ancestors
and the future
generations,
and
from our siblings of all sorts,
to help others in
their work around the world.
to ask for help
Ask for help when I feel the need.
to
pursue a daily spiritual practice
that
that clarifies my mind, strengthens my heart,
and
and supports me in observing these vows.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.